In Wheels, the adventure continues from race to rally, from workshop to boardroom. Guy Smith, you went into 2020 looking forward to racing some legendary cars at some of the best circuits in the world at some very famous racetracks. And to a certain extent, that has been curtailed. You found yourself hosting a podcast about motorsport with a race circuit manager. Now, I know this was your idea. You didn't expect to be arriving here, did you?
No, thanks for rubbing that in, Paul. Yeah, it was supposed to be quite an interesting year in the World Endurance Championship with going back to places like Sebring and Spa and, of course, Le Mans. And unfortunately, none of it's happened. Anyway, doing the podcast with yourself has been a lot of fun. And
Thanks for saying that.
Yeah, well, it's nice. It's nice to chat with lots of different guests that we've had. We've had some great guests. So it's made lockdown a lot more bearable, being able to sort of chat with people and hear people's stories and just generally, yeah, kind of have some fun, really. And, lockdown's sort of over with for the time being, and we're back at it. And, we wanted to continue because the stories have been coming thick and fast. And we've been meeting some really, really interesting people. And today's guest is going to be fantastic. So I'm enjoying the journey so far. I don't know about yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And remember, if you're listening to this wherever you download your podcasts, you can watch on YouTube as well. And there's usually an array of trophies, certainly an array of trophies behind Guy, but there's usually fun things to see on the YouTube. But it's been great to have you all with us and have your interaction as well. And there's been some great questions for today's guest. So on to today's guest. Every now and again, someone comes along and inspires not only people within motorsport, but uses their platform to raise the profile of wider issues outside of the sport. I'm not talking about Lewis Hamilton here, although tonight's guest, there's no Lewis. When you look back through time, it's people like that kind of change history. Nathalie McGloin is a race and rally driver, ambassador for global organizations, president of the FIA Commission for Disability and Accessibility. That's a real mouthful. A charity founder. And if you follow her fitness regimes on Instagram, you'd be hard-pressed to find reasons not to also refer to Nathalie as an athlete. I'm delighted to say someone Guy and I really genuinely respect, both as a racer and as a human being, is today's Spinning Wheels guest. Nathalie, where on earth do we start with all of that?
Well, that's quite an intro to follow, isn't it? I hope I live up to all of that you've said. But thank you for having me on the show. It's great to be part of this, and I look forward to some of the questions that your listeners have been sending in.
If you don't mind, if we start with a quote that I really like from you, which is on your website. For those most people in motorsport know who you are, but for those people who might be listening who don't, I think this is an important place to start. When I'm racing, I leave my wheelchair in the pits. When I'm lining up on that grid with my helmet on, no one knows I'm female or I have a spinal injury. I'm just another driver. And that's the way it should be. And although the opportunities that you've found yourself on the right side of and the inspiration that you've given to others is as a result of some of the things you mentioned there, that very much sums up your approach once you get in the car. And I've seen you get in the car, and that's quite a powerful quote.
Yeah, I think that's the reason I fell in love with motorsport. And I think a lot of disabled drivers will say the same thing. I came from a disabled sport background before I started doing track days and getting into motorsport. So, I was surrounded by other disabled people, which was great because wheelchair rugby really helped me develop as a person after having my injury. And also, when you're part of a social group that all have the same kind of issues, it just, you can make fun of it and it becomes normal and it becomes a lot more daunting. So whilst I loved that kind of aspect of my life, motorsport was completely different. Although it gave me the kind of adrenaline buzz that I got from wheelchair rugby and all of the kind of emotions and stuff that come with that, the kind of ambiguity of my disability in racing and driving a car on a racing circuit was something that I fell in love with instantly, because although I'm a proud wheelchair user and I definitely use my disability to my advantage, but sometimes it is nice to just be like everyone else and just be invisible in terms of my disability and even my gender. I think that racing is one of those things where everyone is the same and all that matters is your skill and your bravery, and that's why I love it.
You say that, but Guy, we've had some female racing drivers. You work with a lot of very good female racing drivers. We were talking about them before we started this And actually, although motorsport does, to a certain extent, blank out who's in the car, there are challenges, aren't there? And Guy, you see that when you're working with people like Casey Milner and Abby Eaton. That Abby said this week that when she's instructing, she's probably one of the best people you'd want to get in a car with to be instructed by, but people will walk backwards in the queue because they're worried about having a female instructor. She actually said that earlier this week on Twitter. I thought it was powerful. There are still challenges.
Which is crazy, really, isn't it? Because, at the end of the day, in my experience, when I've been instructing, when I first started out, the best people to teach were always the females, because they were far more open to listening to what I had to say. They were much keener to learn. Guys were always like, sort of sit back, son, I'll show you how it's done. And actually, females are, are just generally more open to learning and everything else. And I think, as drivers, I mean, look at all the drivers. I mean, look at the drivers coming out now, female drivers. I mean, obviously there's been female drivers in the past, but now you've got Danica Patrick. We talked about like Katie Milner. There's Sophia. I don't know the last name, but so many great female drivers coming out. I mean, I've been following the karting a lot, and there's some really, really, really good girl karters. I mean, really good. So they're going to be coming through in the next sort of five years time or so. They're going to be coming into cars, and really, what is to stop them, going all the way? I mean, it's true that there hasn't been a female driver in Formula One, but I don't really see why that should not. I don't physically see why that should not happen. And I think that for whatever reason it hasn't happened, but I think it's a matter of time before we get a female driver into the top levels of the sport. And I think right now it's an absolute must. I mean, obviously we've got the W Series as well, which is great. People view it a different way. We spoke to Abby about it. She was like kind of torn really, because it's like, well, do I want to race in an all-female series, or do I kind of go against it, and where do I stand on that? But I think she realizes that it's such a great opportunity, and why not use it to your advantage? If you can market yourself and you can position yourself differently, then, and you can use that to your advantage, then absolutely do it. Because as a female in motorsport, you are more the minority, but that doesn't mean to say that you're any less competitive or any less capable. So I think it's going to change. I really do. I think in the next sort of 5 years' time, we're going to see some really, really great female drivers coming through. So looking forward to it.
We'll come back to the Dare to Be Different, because I know you represent and campaign for both disability and accessibility, and also the female in motorsport agenda, Natalie. But coming back to you and your career, just tell us how you got started. How do you get to the point where you're such a well-known, not just racing driver and also rally driver, but figure in motorsport as well? Just tell us how it began, because I like to start there so we get a bit of a picture and a flavour for the person and the career as it started.
Well, I think it kind of started by accident. So I got introduced to track days by a wheelchair rugby teammate, and I just fell in love with it. So whilst I was training with the GB squad with Paralympic kind of ambitions, track days became my expensive hobby kind of on the sideline. And in 2012, like, I just found that with wheelchair rugby, I was out of action for a while through injury. And when I went back into it, I just lost my passion for it. And rugby had been like everything to me. It was my reason to get up in the morning. It was what I based my schedule around. Everything was focused on that. So when I realized that wasn't as strong as it was before, I knew that something different had to replace it. And track days had been a big part of my life. I've been doing them for about 5 or 6 years, just as a casual kind of pastime. And I decided that my next focus would just be getting my racing license. And at the time it was just a license, I just thought, right, well, I'll get it, I'll hang it on the wall next to my degree, and that'll be it, just to prove that I can. And before I'd known it, I'd bought a Cayman S, and I'd entered into the Porsche Club Championship, and it all kind of spiraled out of control. So for me, with anything, I just follow my kind of passion, and if I feel strongly about something and I enjoy doing it, then I kind of do it 100%. So I don't have any middle ground really. So I fell into it basically.
I think that kind of sums you up. There's no middle ground, is there? And also, boyfriend Andrew is a club rally driver, and also is very involved with racing as well with you. So there's no escape from motorsport in your house. I know you've got some pretty tasty cars in the garage as well.
Yeah, I'm less into kind of the motorsport at home than he is. I do have a go at him sometimes just by watching endless YouTube channels of car shows, or like just footage. I'm like, for God's sake, can we watch something different? So it's but he's grown up with it, whereas I haven't. It's something that just developed quite organically just through my love of it. But yeah, we met at Silverstone, and yeah, he's a great driver. Unfortunately he's a lot quicker than me, but I can always learn from him. Try to. But yeah, I mean, you were with him on Monday in his Mark II Escort rally car at Cadwell. So
sounds more glamorous than it was. I was definitely watching by the sidelines, but it looked good.
Yeah, no, it was his first time out actually in it around oh no, he took it out at Silverstone, but first time out at a proper circuit. So
how difficult? So when you said you started with the track days, how difficult was it kind of getting into motorsport, and what, where do you start? Obviously finding the car, finding the places that can do the adaptions and stuff like that. Was it a challenge, or was it quite an easy thing to, is it, I'm just thinking for anybody listening that maybe wants to get into motorsport and thinking, well, maybe I've got a disability. Is it something that I can do, or is it something that is just going to be so difficult? Is it something that's...
Is this where the monkey comes in?
Yeah. Well, for me personally, like I think the biggest challenge for disabled people getting into motorsport is finance.
Yeah.
Because...
Same as anyone.
Yeah, and exactly. Racing, it doesn't matter what your budget is for racing, you always want to do something a bit more, but everyone struggles with budget, and motorsport is an expensive sport. Yeah. But for disabled people, I think there is an added factor to that, because there is an opportunity to just try stuff out. Yeah. If you haven't grown up with karting, or you're not into track days, and you think, I'm disabled, I want to go racing, like where do you start? So yeah. I was in a fortunate position that I could buy my Cayman, and I found the right people to give me advice about adaptations. The adaptations are road adaptations, so yeah. it was fairly straightforward to do. But yeah, I think that is, with my commission and the work that I do with the FIA and Motorsport UK, that's the biggest factor. Is like, how do we increase disabled participation in motorsport? And it is giving people that first opportunity, not at racing or rally driving, but at a track day or a rally experience day. Yeah. Because, until you try it, you don't know if A, you're any good, or B, if you're going to enjoy it. Yeah. So having to invest in either a rally or a sprint or a racing car before you've tried it out isn't really appropriate for a stepping stone in. So it's tough.
If I was to ring Silverstone up, I'm just picking Silverstone, and I say, right, okay, I'm a disabled person, but I want to have a go. Would they have in their fleet a car that I could use? Do you know what I mean? So I guess what I'm saying is, how easy is it? I can ring up and say, yeah, we've got a vehicle for you that's modified. Come along and give it a try. Or is it, or is it not that simple? No, yeah.
No, so Silverstone are fantastic, because Andrew and I run a charity called Spinal Track, which gives people that opportunity. Yeah. And Silverstone support us massively. Right. So Silverstone would say, if you rang up Silverstone and said, I'm disabled, I drive with hand controls, or I need a left foot accelerator, yeah, or an automatic car, where can I go? They would say, go to Spinal Track, and they would give you our details. Okay. But one of my ambitions with my commission and the work I'm doing with the FIA is to get more of the circuits to actually have adapted cars, so that if people ring up, they have something to try. But also, as a commission, we can start directing people to these places in different countries that do facilitate disabled motorsport in its very early stages. Because it's a question I get asked on social media all the time. I'm disabled, I want to give motorsport a try, where do I go? And, if you're not in the UK and I can't direct you to Spinal Track, then I'm limited in what I can suggest. So I think that, that's going to be one of my big pushes next year, is to try and make more opportunities available so that more of us can become involved and do what I love doing.
So
You talk about disabled motorsport like it's something that's established, but actually you've been instrumental in doing that. And in fact, you're the first female tetraplegic racing driver in the world. I think that's right, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Just for anyone who doesn't understand, and actually bizarrely, I remember a stupid argument on Twitter where somebody decided to argue with you about what your disability was. Do you remember that? Yeah, just for anyone listening who, just to clarify and give it a bit of context, just explain if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. So I get that all the time. And anyone who is a tetraplegic who has use of their arms and hands will get the same thing. And it's because in the media and films and stuff, tetraplegia is portrayed as kind of Christopher Reeves, where you're paralyzed from the neck down and you have no upper body movement whatsoever. But tetraplegics are basically someone who's broken the bones in their neck. So all it means is, it's actually Latin. Tetra means four. Might not do. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. But like in America, it's called quadriplegia, and quad means four. So it means four limbs are paralyzed to some degree. So my disability, I've broken the last bone in my neck, which means that I don't have full finger dexterity. So my arms work fine and my hands do work, but I haven't got full grip. So paraplegia is where you've broken your back and you're paralyzed from some degree from the chest down. So, it might just be your lower half, it might be your torso, but your hands aren't affected if the only thing that has affected you is your spinal injury. Obviously, there are paraplegics who have other conditions that affect their hand function, their arms as well. But it's a common misconception. And I have no idea why someone would argue with someone.
Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. And it's not the first time.
Yeah. So tell us where it was at, because obviously now we're at a point where people talk about disabled motorsport and it's a thing, and that's fantastic, but we weren't there before, were we?
I think we were, but we just didn't shout about it.
Okay.
So before the creation of the commission, obviously disabled motorsport was a thing because I'd started it. And, there are a lot of other people in this country who race with disabilities, with, hand controls or different adaptations, and across the world. I mean, Alex Zanardi's a prime example of someone injured in motorsport who got back into it. Yeah. But I think, when Billy had his accident, he was actually the first person that went to the FIA and got some of the regulations changed. And because before Billy got his license reinstated after having his accident, there was a clause in Appendix L of the International Sporting Code that said disabled drivers can't compete in single-seaters. Now, these rules and regulations were put in place years and years and years ago, and they were adapted to individuals. So some of the legislation was in there purely so Alex Zanardi could compete. So they'd go, and instead of taking everything out and, making it what it should be, they'd just change it for individuals so it would allow them to compete if it was safe to. So Jean obviously was aware of this kind of mismatch of...
this is Jean Todt that we're talking about. Like Guy, I'm going to have to reel you back every now and again when you're talking about these stars that we all know, and just remind people listening who we're talking about. So Jean Todt, who is a legend in World Rally, in Formula One, of course, Ferrari team boss in the Schumacher years, and is now president of the FIA, and a personal friend and colleague of Nathalie's, which is pretty cool. So carry on. I'll fanboy every now and again. I have to, just to keep everybody else up to speed as well.
Of course. So he was obviously aware of that, and this is the Disability and Accessibility Commission has been something that has been in the pipeline for a while, but I guess they just didn't know how to go about it in the right way. They didn't want to just play lip service to it. They wanted to make sure that whatever was put in place to really make some positive change in motorsport. So after Billy got the clause taken out about the single-seater restriction for disabled drivers, the commission was then created in earnest in January of 2018, and we really started to make some changes for the better. And the first thing that we did was we went through the legislation and we said, why is this in here? Does it make any sense? Could it be better? And changed it so that it was more appropriate to the motorsport today. And the whole ethos behind the commission is to make motorsport more accessible to disabled people without compromising on safety. And that is always the thing that we fall back on when we make any decisions about motorsport and the legislation that exists.
Wow, didn't he vindicate that decision as well when he went out there with the single seater in F3 with the hand controls in the Carling car? He really must have made those people that made it, sat there and made those decisions think, wow, we made the right decisions there.
Definitely. I mean, Billy's someone that I absolutely look up to. The way he dealt with his accident with such class and such maturity. I think it would have been really fortunate if I'd had someone like Billy as an idol when I had my injury, at such a young age. I was injured at 16. Billy was, I think he was 17. But, kids, adults, anyone can just look at Billy and what he's done and just be inspired by the person that he is. And I'm proud to know him, and I'm proud that our sport has someone like that in it to prove that anything is possible.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a real ambassador, and he's doing such a great job. And now with his TV work and stuff, his profile is high, and which is great. It's great to see.
Like Nathalie as well, he puts us all to shame. Maybe not you guys, you're up to race fitness, but he puts us all to shame with his fitness videos on Instagram, does Billy. Nathalie and Billy, seriously, unfollow them on Instagram if you don't want to feel terrible about your own fitness goals.
Paul, I've just been watching Nathalie's fitness stuff on Instagram, and I feel really, really guilty because I haven't trained today, done anything, and I'm feeling really, really guilty because it looks proper, real hardcore stuff you're doing there. So
yeah. It was when Nathalie pulled her face. You shared a picture of your face after you'd done your workout. When I do a pretty good workout, I do a lot of swimming. So when I come out for a good swim, I look at myself in the mirror. I think, yeah, you worked hard there. Until I have a face that is, muscles in my face are bulging like yours were, I will never think that again. But
I think there's a compliment in there somewhere.
Sorry, yeah, there was meant to be. But does that go back to your general sporting days then when you were doing the rugby and stuff, the desire to be physically fit as well?
Well, rugby, it's such an aggressive sport, and it's a Paralympic sport. So if you've got ambition to make it at the top, like anything, you have to give it everything. Yeah. So I was training 5 days a week. It was really tough because I lived on my own, and you get in from a session. I lived in central London, and I was driving not very many miles, but 2 hours sometimes for an hour and a half training session, and I was just knackered. It was really, really tough. But like everything, the lows and the commitment that you put into stuff like that make it worth it for when you win your games, you win your races. It's one of those things. But
Sorry, do you find that you have to work harder, because of the disability? Like my younger brother's got cerebral palsy, so he's actually he's in a wheelchair. He's on a wheelchair or sticks, and he's constantly having to do lots of work for his upper body because he he gets all kinds of aches and pains and stuff. But he's so strong, and and mentally he's just really, really strong. And seeing him, and I guess for yourself as well, for like mobility, yoga, just keeping everything moving. Because you obviously, you maybe don't have the mobility, but you've got to work hard to keep everything, supple and strong. Is that an important part of your conditioning as well?
Massively, and it's something that I've neglected. When I stopped being like a wheelchair rugby athlete and started, I've never given up rugby, but when I stopped pursuing it as kind of a career, and I started in motorsports, I kind of gave up the routine that I had, and lockdown was an opportunity for me to get back into this. I should have done this years ago, but like the stretching and stuff, I'm feeling it now that I haven't done it. But it's never too late to start with exercise and looking after yourself, whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally. Even if you've neglected any part of that for any length of time, it doesn't mean that you can't start and become healthy in any of those capacities again. So I'm doing what I need to do strength wise, and I'm also doing kind of the yoga stuff and the stretching and stuff, because you feel better if you're more supple. If you're all like tight everywhere and not able to kind of do stuff, it limits you. So it's massively important for me, and I think I'm almost grateful that lockdown's kind of shown me that this needs to happen again, because it's one of the positives I can bring out of that.
I'm horrendous. I do all this training and I never stretch. I'm like the most unflexible person you've ever met. So I do all the training, and then I just never stretch. And I'm literally like, I'm useless. I mean, just terrible. So now whenever I'm doing any stretching, I'm like, if I try and do any yoga, I mean, it's just, it's hilarious because I'm just like, So, but you're absolutely
Obviously,
right.
we get a video for the spinning wheels
Oh,
Instagram.
well, I'm not, yeah, you don't want to see that.
I'll put the Rocky soundtrack to it or something for you.
Yeah, exactly.
What I like about the journey we've gone on with this podcast is whoever we've spoken to, whether it's been WRC stars, racing drivers, there's always been something in their career which has been an adversity they've had to face and get over, whether it was Elfyn Evans with the mental block of not being able to get out of the rut that he was in when he dropped back into the second category of WRC, whether it was money issues with Mike Simpson early doors when he's trying to get the foot in the door, but you haven't got the money to do it, whether it's Abby facing the problems that she had with the stigma of being a female in the championship she was trying to get into, and Natalie, with your adversity, that adversity in each and every case so far in this podcast has been a driving factor, and it has been the reason that that person has wanted to fight and work a bit harder to make it happen. Is that fair to say, Guy?
Yeah, absolutely, completely agree. But I think what Natalie doing as well is it's also about making it positive for other people, and making other people kind of turning the negative into a positive, isn't it? And actually saying, yeah, these are the challenges I face, but do you know what? I'm achieving so much, and you can achieve. And like you said about Billy, he's had the accident, but actually he's come back. He's almost better than when he was before he had the accident. He's actually, Formula 3, Carlin, pole positions. He's actually, it just proves that it can be done. And but that's, mentally, it's all about the mental state of mind, and not everybody's got that strength. And I think obviously Natalie's, the work that she's doing with the FIA and everything else, it's amazing, really. Yeah.
Can we talk about that race win? Because you haven't been racing for that long. So you raced with the Porsche Club Championships, but also the Classic Sports Car Club. That's correct, isn't it? And it was with the Classic Sports Car Club that you took the win at Silverstone, wasn't it?
No, so it was at the Walter Hayes.
Okay, right, okay, which is coming up again, isn't it, soon?
Yes, but it was with the BWRDC, so right. The British Women Racing Drivers Club, and it's kind of a run what you run kind of thing, as long as you conform to your championship regulations.
Some fantastic cars in that race-winning scene as you coming over the finish line, from Morgan V8s to Porsches to sports cars.
Yeah, well, the great thing is Katie and I can race together, which we don't. Katie
Milner, yeah.
So we don't get that opportunity because we race in different series. So she beat me in the first race, and I've beaten her in the second race. So the next one, which they haven't run it this year, despite COVID, they weren't going to run it. I'm hoping they do next year because it will be kind of the decider.
Just tell us about that feeling, because one day I hope that I've done a bit of club rally driving. One day I hope I'll win a race or a rally, but that must be a fantastic feeling, having jumped in a car, done track days, and developed the car with Andrew as well, and to go out and actually win a race.
Yeah, it was a bit weird because I qualified on pole, and I'm not used to being on pole. I'm used to being like mid to back of the pack. So when I lined up and there was nothing in front of me, I was like, I don't really know. And also I had to control the pace for the green flag lap, and I was like, am I going too quickly? Am I doing it wrong? So it was really, really strange. And I think I was so far forward that I couldn't really see the lights properly. So it's like all these things go through your head where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing here. This doesn't feel like a normal race. And then taking the checkered flag as well, like that, it was fairly surreal. But I almost, because Katie was on my tail quite early on, and I'd forgotten to put the demister on, and it was wet. So as I was driving round, my windscreen was just getting fogged up, and I was oh. So because I've got one hand on the wheel, I didn't have a spare hand to turn the demister on until we were on the straights. But because I did, I had to then take my hand off the accelerator, and Katie passed me. And I was just like, oh, and then she started to get away, and I was like, I can't throw this away. So we had a cat and mouse chase for a bit. Then I passed her, and I managed to convert it into the win. So, but yeah, it was a strange thing. And I know also when I came into the pits, I've never been on the podium before. I didn't really know where to go. I was like, do I just drive round?
Like Jenson Button when he won the championship, didn't know where to go, did he? On Monaco, wasn't it? And he'd never been there before, so he was running down the pit lane to find it.
I'd been on the podium that season in class, but not overall. So, you know, you kind of, unless you're an overall podium, you don't, you know, you just go back to your garage. So, yeah, I mean, it was amazing. And it was just like, I'd had such a bad season in 2017 that it was really what I needed, because I almost gave it up in 2017. I crashed my car at Brands the first test day before the first race of the season. I had a wheel bearing collapsed, which caused ABS failure at the end of the pit straight. I just put my brakes on where it usually would, and car locked up, and I hit the wall at about 70. And I mean, I got away with it. The car wasn't that damaged, no suspension damage or anything, just bodywork. And I injured my shoulder, but you know, well, I say nothing that wouldn't heal. I still get a few niggles from it, but I think that's more to do with being in a chair and stuff. I think an able-bodied person who would have crashed like that probably wouldn't have, you know, just brushed it off within a couple of weeks. But the biggest thing was my confidence, because even though we got the car fixed, every time I went out in it after that crash, it just wanted to spin. And we didn't know what it was. And every time we went out and there was no kind of indication of what was causing it, I just thought, well, it must be me. I must have forgotten how to drive. And I just hated it. I hated racing. The last race of the season at Croft, I didn't want to do it. I really wished that I would get food poisoning or something that night, like the day before, so the test day, which was the day before the race. I just hoped that something would happen where I wouldn't be able to race the next day. And I had to do it because, you know, I was there and I've got sponsors and all the rest of it. And I said to myself, if I still feel like this at the end of the year, I'm giving it up, because what's the point if you don't enjoy it? It's too expensive and it's too dangerous to do unless you absolutely love it. Yeah. And that was the race that I then entered into at the Walter Hayes, that I came third and Katie came second. And I fell back in love with it again. And so I entered a new championship in 2018 and I started getting my podiums, and it was just like, you know, and they weren't podiums because I had, you know, the quickest car, or, you know, I was in a race that they were outright because I was better than the other drivers. And that did huge amounts for my confidence in a season after my confidence was just not there anymore. So yeah, 2018 was fantastic. It was also the Silverstone podium with Kimi that I presented.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because that's on my notes as well. There's some fantastic shots from that. But just tell us about how that came up. Did Jean give you that?
No, he didn't. So David Richards did.
That's right. I knew somebody had said, I want you to do this.
So, I mean, everything happened so quickly. You know, I started racing in 2015. I'm offered this role with the FIA in 2017. I started to get podiums, and it was just crazy. And I'd been invited to the Motorsport UK board meeting to talk to the board members about my perspective of the licensing process. And afterwards, David invited everyone back to his house for dinner. And he said to Andrew and I, he said, "Oh, come a bit earlier so I can just show you around so that you're comfortable." So it was a gorgeous evening. It was really warm. And we were outside and we were having some champagne. And he said to me, "Are you going to the Silverstone Grand Prix this year?" And I said, "Yes, I am. I'm going as a guest of Motorsport UK on the Saturday, and I'm going as a guest of the FIA on the Sunday." And he said, "Good, because you'll be presenting the third place trophy on the podium." I looked at him. I was like, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, the chairman of the ASN usually always presents the third place podium, but this year I want you to do it."
Wow,
fantastic!
And I didn't know what to say. I was like, "Oh my God, thank you!" Like, and then he was like, "But don't tell anyone, because I've got to clear it with Jean Todt first." And I was like, "You just told me that, and I can't tell anyone."
And it might not happen, yeah.
Yeah, and then I was like, So I knew David wanted me to do it because he wanted to give visibility to what was happening in motorsport with disabled people.
Yeah.
And I knew Jean would say yes, because, you know, he wanted exactly the same thing. But, you know, I couldn't tell my mum, because my mum would have just told everyone. So I told her, I think I told her a week before I was allowed to announce it. And I think I told my dad earlier. My dad's a bit better at keeping secrets than my mum. But, you know, this incredible thing. Like, it was still the best day of my life. Like, to this day. But the fact that I could only tell people, I think it was like the week before. So yeah, I mean, I went. So the week before that day was incredible, because I'm an ambassador for Wings for Life, which are a Red Bull funded charity that are searching for a cure for spinal injuries. And they asked me if I would go to a Red Bull shooting day somewhere, I can't remember the name of the shooting ground, but to do a talk on behalf of Wings for Life. And, you know, Christian Horner was there, and Max Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo and all of the Red Bull team. And there was me talking about my little, you know, experience in motorsport to these F1 drivers and F1 teams. And then I was invited to the F1 ball that evening, alongside Mark Webber, who's also an ambassador for Wings for Life, and David Coulthard was there as well. Talking, like, I was on the same table as Mark and talking after him on the stage, again for Wings for Life. But I was just like, this week is so surreal. So then on the Saturday, I went to Silverstone, and Christian Horner had very kindly invited us into their hospitality unit. So I got chatting to Max, which was incredible. And I said to him, I'm presenting the trophy tomorrow for the third place driver. I either wanted it to be Max or Kimi. So
you didn't tell Max that, did you?
No, I told him that I wanted it. I think I did, actually. It was either him or Kimi. And he was like, oh, that's cool, you know. I mean, he was so nice as well. He was just chatting about Porsches and, you know, did I like the Carrera Cup cars, as if like we were like just, you know, two normal people, like no ego or anything. Such a lovely guy.
He doesn't come across like that either in the press, does he? And in the motorsport press, you see him, he doesn't come across like that.
No, he was lovely. And then at the end of the day, I saw Kimi in the paddock, and he was being harassed by this guy in this like big, colourful coat. And I thought, I'm going to have to go and say hi. So I barged in, and I said, hi, Kimi, my name is Nathalie McGloin. I'm president of the FIA Disability and Accessibility Commission, and I'm presenting the third place trophy on the podium tomorrow. And I think he looked at me and was just like, crazy woman in a wheelchair, of course you are. You know, and he kind of smiled, and I got a photo with him, and I said, I haven't seen qualifying, how did you do? And he said, third. I came third. And I said, oh, well, maybe I might present the trophy to you tomorrow. And he said, well, if you are, you better get yourself a different trophy, because I don't want to come third. And I thought, well, fair enough. So when the time came round to me being on the podium, like, we were kind of set back from where the drivers walk in. And obviously the drivers walk in and they wave to the crowd. They don't look at the dignitaries, you know, that's not important to them. They're there for the crowd and for their moments. And so he didn't see me. And the other trophies were presented first, I think. And I was kind of round the corner a little bit from where the trophy was resting on the little podium for the trophies. Yeah. And as I came around the corner with the trophy on my lap, he looked at me and his face just lit up, and he jumped down from his podium. And he said, oh, you said you'd be here. And I was like, well, yeah, I wasn't making it up. And he was like, oh, fantastic. And he was so lovely. That's
that picture where he's bent in having a chat to you on the podium. Yeah. That's fantastic.
He knew, like, the trophy was quite big, and he seemed to get that, like, my hands didn't work properly, because the way he shook my hand, he like clasped it with both hands. And then when I presented him with the trophy, he helped me give it to him. And he was just amazing. And then Lewis and Sebastian got down from their steps and came to shake my hand. And they were all they made it so incredible.
Wow. And I remember watching it. I was sat at home watching that.
It was just like the best day ever. And they all posed for photos with me, and Kimi had a bit of a chat with me after. And it was that summer, you know, that was really, really hot.
Yeah.
Our glorious summer of 2018. And before I got to the place, because we had to be on there for about 40 minutes before the drivers got back. And because of my disability, I can't sweat. So I have a real hard time regulating my temperature. And also when I get too hot, like my legs jump about a bit. So I was like up there thinking, God, the cars haven't even come back now. What if I faint in front of all these people, like 400 million people on TV or whatever? And then I thought, what if I get the trophy and my legs start jumping and it falls off? So all of these things went through my head, like just before the event. But it was incredible, and I'll remember it forever. And it was like the best day ever.
I'm getting that your mind goes into overdrive whenever you're about to do something big, whether it's starting a race on pole or it's about to hand a trophy to.
A little bit, yeah.
You and Guy I love that story. I'm glad we got the inside track on that. You and Guy have both done the same thing in that you've gone from racing to rallying. Now, Guy, you had a family background in rallying, but you both competed at Cadwell, my circuit, when Guy won the rally there, and you were in the Porsche, Nathalie. How have you found the switch from race to rally?
Do you want to go first, Guy? Or?
No. I'm absolutely want to hear what you have to say, because I'm interested to see if the same experience.
All right, okay. I doubt we have. But, well, I was a bit nervous at first because, like, rallying is Andrew's thing. You know, he won the Sealed Surface Championship in 2016, I think. I think he might have won it twice, so I'm not sure. But you know, I've never been able to experience rallying because track days is a lot easier to kind of get into if you haven't got a track car, because you can track your road car, but you can't track a road car on dirt. So when Spinal Track set up their kind of rally program, that was the first opportunity for me to have a go in that. And
is that with Bill Gwynn?
Yeah. Bill, who passed away a couple of years ago, he was massively one of the reasons that we were able to do what we did. He was so passionate about getting me in a car because Andrew used to instruct there.
I see.
So, you know, Bill was always thinking about ways, how can we get Nathalie in a car? So when we discussed doing this, he was just like, right, let's make this happen. And unfortunately, he passed away before he saw it come to fruition. But I always feel like he's there in spirit whenever I'm at the school and whenever we're running days and stuff. And I felt like he was there at my first rally as well, because he would have loved that. He would have absolutely loved to have seen me sitting in that driver's seat starting those stages. But yeah, I was nervous because, like, I'm not great on new tracks. I like to know where I'm going. I like to have done it a number of times. I like to be prepared. And also I was nervous because Andrew and I don't get on very well in the car when he's instructing me on the track, because I'm a little bit like, this is my thing, don't tell me how to drive. But so with him being my co-driver, I was like, are we going to argue? So I had all these things kind of running through my head, and also I didn't want to be rubbish at it. You know, I wanted to do it justice, which, I mean, the Cayman's a big, heavy beast to rally, but, you know, within the GT regulations, and it's not conventional to turn a racing car into a rally car and then turn it back into a racing car, but I don't really do things conventionally. So, yeah, I was nervous before my first event, but I found it a lot less stressful than racing, and I really enjoyed it because I get really kind of het up by the whole going into the holding grid, like waiting, trying to distract your mind from the fact that you're going out for the green flag lap and then you're there in front of the lights. And it kind of gets me up to a stage where I'm really kind of quite stressed, kind of in a good way, but, you know, it's all part of the racing process. But with the rallying stuff, I know the stress is kind of all day because you don't get any downtime really. But the fact that I wasn't going through that kind of showcase of you're on the start grid, the lights are about to go out. I know the lights do go out, but it's a different thing. I really took to it, and I really enjoyed it. And I really liked the challenge of not knowing where I was going as well.
Did you argue, Natalie? Are you okay?
We argued. We didn't argue at Donington because we got the tyre pressures wrong at Donington. It was so slippery and it was wet. I don't think we argued at Donington. We did argue at Cadwell.
Everyone argues at Cadwell. It's fine. I argue at Cadwell.
Well, there was a hairpin, and he didn't say hairpin right. He just said hairpin, and I didn't go left or right. I just went straight on. And he was like, "You know where the track goes?" And I was like, "I don't. It's a stage that I've never done before." And we had a big argument then because I went off the track and Kathy Stewart passed me. And I mean, she would have passed me anyway. She was faster than me, but it was a bit embarrassing. But obviously, you've got to tell me a left or right. Don't expect that I know where I'm going. So we had quite a big fallout then, but then it was fine. But I think there's massive merit to having a rally driver as your co-driver when you're a novice, because he wasn't just telling me the notes. He was telling me how to drive. He was instructing me, and I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much or did as well as I did, because I finished both rallies and I had a little bit of a knock from a lorry tyre, but aside from that, no damage.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably quite something to be a bit proud of in your first kind of venture.
Definitely. It's a difficult place as well, both of those difficult, particularly Cadwell. It's one of those places that, even racing, whether you're racing or rallying, it is technical, it's tight, and if you get your braking zone wrong, you hit a tractor tyre, it's all over.
Well, and Cadwell went into the night time as well, didn't it?
Yes.
So again, so the last stage or last couple of stages were in the dark, so it was tricky, very tricky.
I've done some endurance racing into the night. I'm not a massive fan. I'll do it, but I'm much slower in the dark.
I have a question relating to this, and if I don't do it when it's relating to it, I drop it in when it's not that relevant. So let me find the question we had on Twitter from one of our listeners about just that, which was for real thing. Don't have a name on this one, but they said, when will you compete in the 24-hour Le Mans race? Seems we're talking about endurance racing and racing into the night.
Well, is that a question for me?
Yeah. Well, we know when Guy. Well, he was meant to do it a week ago.
That's been you, but
So, and I'm gonna. It's quite. I think it's quite appropriate that this question has been asked in the presence of Guy, actually.
Yeah.
Because I believe that drivers that talk about going to Le Mans who don't have the skill to go to Le Mans is massively disrespectful for the drivers that race at Le Mans. Just because I'm a disabled driver, and a lot of disabled drivers do toe the party line that is, I want to be the first disabled driver to race at Le Mans, or I know Fred Sissette was the first disabled driver to race at Le Mans, but it's a good pull for sponsors. But I would never, ever say that I was going to race at Le Mans, because I am not good enough to race at Le Mans. And that doesn't mean that I'm not a good driver, because I am.
Yeah.
But the skill level that is needed to race at Le Mans and be competitive and not be dangerous because you're too slow is something that club level racers just don't have, unless, you invest a lot of money in, driving their GT3 cars or whatever constantly. I would love to be able to say that something like that was on my agenda, but it's just not realistic. And I wouldn't want to put myself or any of the other drivers in a position where I'm racing in a championship that is massively revered and massively skillful that I'm not capable of doing.
That's really interesting. So I think that's the first time I've ever heard anybody say that. It's actually
a cracking answer.
It's quite refreshing, and I think I wouldn't. It's like putting a novice in the Indy 500. It's not safe for them, and it's not safe for the drivers doing it. And I think with Le Mans, even as an experienced driver, it's one of those places you go to, and you have to have respect. Every time you get in the car, you have to have respect for the car. And you're right. There's a lot of drivers go there, a lot of very good drivers, but a lot of drivers that come out of either club racing or what have you, and they're bringing the money to enable that team to be there, whatever else. But they actually haven't got the ability. And I've seen it before. I've seen drivers go around Le Mans with in the nighttime with no lights on because they didn't have to turn the lights on. And I've also seen drivers go around. So one driver do a full lap on the pit lane speed limiter and complain he had a misfire. He had the pit lane speed limiter on. You know,
this is during the race.
This is during the race, yeah.
Ugh.
Well, actually, the pit speed one was in testing, but done in night practice. And of course, like, well, if you have an accident, it's a big one, isn't it? But I think everybody should have goals there. I mean, you know, and I think as long as you're realistic of what your ability is, you're not setting yourself up to fail either, are you? You're saying, well, what is an achievable goal? Right, I'll do that. And if you achieve it, you say, well, okay, well, I'll maybe reset my expectations and I'll maybe raise my level, and I've maybe exceeded what I thought I could do. I'll reset the bar, because otherwise you set yourself up for something, you know, to fail. But I think you're quite right. You know, you just got to see where it goes. But I mean, which do you prefer, kind of racing or rallying? Have you kind of got a preference now? Now you've done a bit of both, of which kind of you'd like to do more of, or are you quite open to doing?
Yeah, what are your goals? What are your motorsport goals? Where are you going?
So I think I'll always be a racer. I think that's where I've started. That's my thing.
Yeah.
But I love rally driving. And I think if there was a more obvious choice of car for me that I could drive with a double clutch gearbox that I could afford to buy, that would be competitive, I think I would seriously consider going down that route. I mean, at the moment, the only option is changing my Cayman into a rally car, which is great. I mean, my Cayman's ace. It's such a good little car, but it's heavy and it's a big old beast. And I really want to be able to drive in a rally in something light, something that is capable of, you know, doing what everyone else does. Well, to a certain degree anyway. But yeah, so I think I definitely want to do some more rallies. I definitely, that will be maybe not next year, but it definitely will be in the future. I'd like to investigate getting a car that was more suitable. I don't know what that would look like.
No, Dave Hawkins. He's
yes,
yeah, with the Mark II.
Yeah.
He's got a business that actually makes the lifts into cars.
Yes, I met him. Where did I meet him? I want to say Snetterton.
He was at the Cadwell Park. He's one of the North Humberside Motor Club members, so he might have been there when.
No, it was before I'd started rallying that I met him. It might have
fair
even been before I started racing.
Because he went from a Subaru to a GCA Subaru to a Mark II Escort, and it is a top spec fire breathing. It's like Andrew's Escort is very nice. Yeah.
See, but he's paraplegic, so he's got full finger function. Right. So the limitation with me is that I can change gear in my road car. I can change down with the paddles.
Yep.
At racing speed, my hand has to be fully on the wheel, and I don't want to be trying to do anything else with it because my thumbs aren't very good. So I know other people who are tetraplegics who race who have better thumbs than me, who can down change and up change on buttons. But there definitely is a solution out there for me. I haven't invested the time or the money into finding what it is, because the Cayman, I'm not at the limitation of my Cayman. So, you know, the car is still quicker than my ability. So I'm still trying to get to the top of that. Yeah. And at the moment, the gear shifting in the Cayman, with it doing it, because I just do it in drive it in drive mode. So it changes gear for me. It's not slowing me down. It's actually probably quicker than a human doing it. Mm-hmm. So until a stage comes where I think, right, I've reached my capacity with this, I'll go to something else.
What about the GT86s that you run for Spinal Track? Are they not suitable?
Again, I just think they'd be really heavy. The steering's a bit heavy for me, in that I've had the steering lightened in the Cayman, because in my first years I was racing on slicks, and I just found that although it was doable, I raced my first 2 seasons without lightened steering. It was hard work. So I had the steering lightened. So the GT86, we don't really want to spend charity money doing it for. Of course, yeah. You know, it's a fine line. But I do think, because someone races the GT86 in the Motorsport UK rally.
Yeah, there's a couple. Yeah, one of the ex R3 British Rally Championship cars Chris Harris drove, I think, is.
I don't know how they've got them that light. They're like super light.
It's like Rally Prep that do them, I think.
Yeah, so we've sought a lot of advice from Rally Prep for our cars, who are great. I think because it's an auto box in the GT86, but
Okay.
to be honest, you wouldn't know that it wasn't a double clutch. It's really good. And it lets you, there's a lot of slip with the car, even with the traction control not completely turned off. So I think it would be good if we could get the weight down, but you're always limited by an automatic or a double clutch transmission, giving you that extra weight that you just can't get out. You can't get it out of other places. So, if there was an option, which I think with some of the stuff I'm doing with a different team, where we're investigating different options for adaptations, I think I'd love to do it in something small and light. If I could find a solution for maybe a sequential box with paddle shift somewhere else, maybe with my elbow or something, I don't know. But it's not on my agenda for the immediate future. My immediate future plans are to race a Cayman GT4, which I should be doing the first weekend of November, even though I haven't driven the car yet. So
wow, awesome.
Yeah, I don't think it's not GT4 homologated, so it needs to have the MR pack to be classified as like a homologated GT4. So I think it's 100 horsepower more than mine, which is significant, but it's not
Just
like
well, in a world where we talk about tenths of seconds.
But it's not completely out of my comfort zone. I don't think it'll be the top of it, but a GT3 car, I might be a bit stupid to step into one of those without much testing, or just even to step in one of those at the moment.
Sounds like a goal, though. It sounds like you have considered
definitely.
it.
Well, why not? Like,
I can tell you what, Natalie. Although they're faster, they're actually easier. I think they're easier to drive than a GT4. It's all relative, isn't it? You're going faster, but actually the car's more capable of doing it, and you have a bit more downforce and things. So actually, a lot of drivers, they get into a GT3 and they're like, you can still get used to the speed if you know what I mean. So I'm sure you'd absolutely wouldn't have a problem. So
we've got another relevant question here. Actually, we passed one. We actually answered Phil Taylor's question, which was, has Nathalie always wanted to be a racing driver? You answered that. You started with the track days and went from there. But then this question is probably quite relevant to move on from this point, which is, what drives you to continue racing, to continue to have these goals? We know that you were going to give up at the end of the 2017 season. 2018 brought back the magic for you. 2020 has been rubbish for everyone. But what drives you?
I just like racing. What I get from racing, like, I don't get it from anything else. Like, I had a revelation, I think it was last year, it might have even been this year, that I've been injured 21 years this year, and I did my first race 16 years after I broke my neck. And my first race, I think, was a time where I made peace with my injury. And I just think, my injury, I'm tetraplegic, my injury is not, it's not completely debilitating to the point where I'm reliant on carers or anything like that. But, there are certain things I can't do. And to be able to get into a racing car and compete with able-bodied men on a race circuit, on slicks, it was just a time where I think I just thought, you know what, if you can do that, you can do anything.
Absolutely.
So I don't, that motivates me for racing, what it gives me and what I feel when I'm in the car, and just the freedom and my disability is just not there. So that's what motivates me. That's why I continue to do it. And I think that's why I'll always continue to do it.
I think we could be talking to the next FIFA president, Paul, to be fair. That's what I'm thinking.
I don't think so. I think my lack of business experience would probably. Although the CEO for Lamborghini's job's just gone.
Of course, yes, because obviously Ferrari and Formula One need to get a bit more influence at the top, because those decisions are not going their way, are they? That's very cynical of me. I actually, just to mention that, because I know you've got a cool garage between you and Andrew, everything from Peugeot 205 rallies upwards, but you drive a Lamborghini on the road, don't you?
I used to.
You used to. Very recently, though. Was it a Aventador?
A Huracan Performante.
Huracan, okay. Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
That's really cool.
I cried when I sold it.
Yeah. What are you driving on the road at the minute? I like to know what racing drivers drive on the road.
I've got 911 GT3 second gen, a 991. There's something wrong with it. I drove it today. Like the brakes, it doesn't stop.
Because you're caning it everywhere, Natty. That's what the problem is.
It needs a setup on it, and I think something needs to be sorted with the brakes. Because I've had a couple of GT3s, and none of them have felt like this with the brakes.
You've got a beautiful classic Porsche as well.
Not in this GT3. So my first gen GT3, I did a lot of track days in that, because I started track days in the 997 Turbo.
Right.
The obvious car.
Note to self: never buy a car from Nathalie.
Yeah, the Porsche dealer that bought that 997 Turbo, yeah, he wasn't happy with me.
You've got a beautiful classic Porsche as well, haven't you?
My 964.
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't driven that very much at all. It had the hand controls off it for a while, but I've just had some new suspension put on it, and I'm looking forward to driving that again. But I just, it smells so bad. The inside of it, just if you sit in it, you just smell of like 964 mold when you get out. So
that's just old cars. I love that about classic cars. That's what I like about classic cars.
No,
if you follow Nathalie on Instagram though, it's a real racing driver's lifestyle. I love it. Fast cars, Formula One drivers, and you know, life in the fast lane is it's a bit of a cliche.
Instagram's not reality, is it? It's all your best bits.
Really? Is it not? Yeah. No. And I thought it was. Well, there you go.
That's why I didn't share that photo of you dressed as Baby Spice guy.
All right, Paul, you keep bringing that up now. Just let it go.
Quite like it.
Let it go.
I'm intrigued.
Nathalie, you don't want to know. You don't want to know.
Okay, we'll leave it there.
So we've got some quick fire questions, haven't we?
We have. Let me find them. Okay, here we go.
So you can't behave like you do on the start line when you're on pole position or when you're about to present the trophy. There's no getting startled and wondering how to respond to these. It's your first thought.
Okay, fair enough.
Right, okay, let me get my
focus.
Okay, so race or rally, Nathalie?
Race.
Porsche or Lamborghini?
Porsche.
Lewis or Kimi?
Kimi.
Understeer or oversteer?
Oversteer.
Beach or adventure holiday?
Neither.
Gym or sim?
Gym.
This is a big one. Dogs or cats?
This is a big one.
Oh, that's awful, because I want to say dogs, but I've got a cat, so I'm still going to have to say dogs.
Yes.
I'm not a cat person, but she adopted us.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Well, that's brilliant. So every racing driver so far, it continues. It's the dogs, and that's what people talk about on Twitter more than anything else.
I don't know how many guests we've had. What we're up to now, Paul? 17, 18?
This is 19, isn't it?
19. And I think 18 out of 19 people have said dogs. So
really,
that's about right, isn't it, Paul? 18?
That's correct. Only Brian Gush said cats. So it's a record I'm keen to keep up. And as I say, all these inspiring stories from stars of racing and rallying and American motorsport, and all people on Twitter want to know is whether you prefer dogs or cats. It's becoming a thing.
Big question.
And if you say cats, your career is probably shot. You know,
that's exactly. It was teetering there for a moment, wasn't it?
It's a really good question. I'm going to ask people in the future if I'm interviewing anybody. I'm going to say, you know, if I'm interviewing young drivers, and I think if they've got any talent, I'll say, so like dogs or cats? Cats. Sorry, can't work with you anymore. It's not gonna work out. So
Alex Albon likes cats. He's got his own Albon cat Instagram account.
Probably says it all.
He's 5, I think.
Well, I like Alex, but he's not beating Max, is he? He's probably a dog lover. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I reckon Max is a dog lover.
Let's not try and insult too many Formula One drivers before we finish today.
Yeah. So, Paul, the pass-along question for Mr. Edwards, I didn't write it down. I said to you, did you remember it? And we didn't even do it on the actual...
Yeah, unfortunately, I was too quick to wrap up. And so he didn't get to put his pass-along question in, but he did tell us that his co-driver, Patrick Walsh, who you may have come across, Nathalie, co-drives for Guy as well in the circuit and other people in the circuit championship. He apparently goes out and he puts, I can't remember which side it was, but he always puts one of the side of the bonnet pins down first. He always checks them before they do a stage.
High pressures.
No, it was the bonnet pins. He checks them.
Oh, was it?
Yeah,
okay.
He checks them in a certain order. So when they got back in the car, he'd done it on the last stage before they won the BRC championship. Matt said to him, "I'm sorry, Patrick. I know you didn't know that I'd noticed this, but you do have to get back out of the car because you did the bonnet pins in the wrong order. So he actually made him get back out before they were due to start the stage and do it in the right order, because that was a bit of a superstition. So Matt wanted to ask, and he would have asked if I'd given him a word in Edgeways, what superstitions, if any, do you have?
So I don't have any superstitions, but I won't talk badly about my cars in front of them. So if we're in the garage and we've got someone in the garage, they'll go, "So which is your favourite car?" I'm like, "What? I can't tell you here, can I?"
That's like your children. That's like children. It's like, you know, do you have a favourite? Do you have a favourite car? Well, I can't say in front of, you know, I can't do it.
I'm fully behind that. If I'm selling my car and I'm driving the car to sell it, I feel like I'm taking a dog to the pound.
It's awful, isn't it?
Yeah. I try and get someone else to drive it.
Do you name your cars?
No, so they're just called like Turbo, or Andrew really annoyingly.
No, but they're just called Turbo.
Well, that's the Turbo or GT3 or
right,
you know, whatever. But Andrew calls my Turbo either Barry Boost or Terry Turbo, which I hate.
Yeah.
He knows I hate it, so he just does it even more.
That's like a kid's cartoon, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Actually, that's a good idea. I had an argument with my mum on text yesterday about whether my car was a male or a female, because she referred to it as a female. I was like, my car's not a female. She's like, how do you know? Don't really want to get into this with you, but it's definitely not. It's a car. And then I actually referred to him as later on.
Mine aren't male or female. They're just cars. I do chat with my Cayman. If we have a good race, I'll chat with it and just tell it, "Thank you for looking after me. We're a team. Be nice to me. Behave in a predictable way."
Oh, I feel like a real meanie now because I never speak to mine. I feel like I've neglected them all these years. Next time I get back in that Bentley, I'll say, "Right, good old girl. I'll have a little chat. You know, we'll reminisce. We'll talk about good old times."
So we talked about some things that are going to inspire people for a long time today, and we ended on dogs, cats, Guy dressed as a Spice Girl again, and whether you talk to your car. Sorry, Guy, I promise not to mention that again. I saw your face. But genuinely, I said to begin with, but I respect what you've done in racing, and I love the fact that you're going rallying now, and I hope to see you back at Capital Park rallying very soon.
Thank you.
But I do respect what you're doing as a human being as well. I think we all have the power to inspire. You just happen to be using what you've got a little bit more than most of us at the minute, and that's pretty exciting to watch unfold.
Thanks, Paul.
Natalie, Paul's gone off on one again, as usual. I need to ask you a pass-along question.
I've got a weird pass-along question.
Because we're going to miss it again. So Natalie, have you got one for us?
I have.
Okay, great.
If motorsport was an animal, which animal would it be?
That's going to take us places, isn't it?
That is, yeah, exactly.
What animal would it be for you, Natalie? Remember, your career could depend on this.
I tried to work it out. I was either thinking like
a dog,
a dolphin. No, a dolphin.
Terry Turtle.
Like, no, not Terry or Barry. Just no. A dolphin's. It's fast. It's fun. It can breathe out of the water and under the water, so you know the different aspects of different motorsports. And yeah, it's
if you're not watching this on YouTube, just watch that bit on YouTube and just look at Guy and my expression there as Natalie's going into why a dolphin would be a perfect name for
I did spend some time thinking about it.
You have, I can tell.
Now, would you class a dragon as an animal?
Well, it's not real, is it?
No, it's a mythological.
Hang on a second. What do you mean dragons aren't real?
Man. We're shattering illusions now, as well as creating dreams.
Next thing
Father Christmas.
You're going to tell me there's no Father Christmas, aren't you? Oh,
that's one my kids can't watch now.
Or Tooth Fairy? Oh. No Tooth Fairy? No.
Oh,
okay.
dear.
That's it. I'm going to have to go, guys. Sorry, I'm distraught. Well, thank you, Natalie. It's been a pleasure. It's the first time I've really had a chance to speak with you, and I'm hopefully we'll get some time in the future, and you know, certainly if anything I can do to help, I'd love to be involved. And I think it's amazing what what you've done so far, and I'm sure what you're going to go on to achieve going forward. And you keep banging that drum and representing and doing your thing. It's fantastic. So thanks for being on the show with us, and we hope to catch up with you soon.
Thanks, Guy. Thanks, Paul. I've loved being on the show. It was great.